Don Payne, he's this, he's that. And yet he's had one standout year in his career. I think that's actually a little bit unfair. I think some of the years leading up to 2022, he had good seasons. And certainly as a younger player, they were seasons in which he was beginning to prove that if he could put it all together, consistency-wise, that he could be a dominant, a top 5-ish, no worse than top 10-ish defensive tackle, no worse than top third in the league, but really top quarter of the league in defensive tackle, interior defensive lineman. I thought that, leading up to 2022, I remember the arguments about should they or shouldn't they, trade him before 2022. And I said, no, you got to give it one last shot. And then he balled out. I mean, the year before in 2021, he was pretty good. The issues were always what they were before the one season. And then after the one season, the last 3 seasons, it's consistency with Don. But yes, I've always been a fan of Don Payne's talent. He is a freakish athlete. Other people in the business that evaluate talent and talk about players on our team have always said 94 is a freak if he can just put it together consistently. But I thought I did a decent job. Maybe I didn't. I guess there's definitely an underlying, I'm not sure why they're bringing him back, because of the big cap savings that they would get and because he's going to count $28+ million on the cap this year. And that's way too expensive for a player that's been as inconsistent as he's been. And you've got to really feel like there's more that you can get out of him with this new defensive coordinator, with the contract year, of course. But yeah, there is that underlying thought. And I'll tell you, all season long with Steve Suter, doing the film breakdown for us, Suter was very down on Don Payne. He recognized the talent and occasionally would say, my God, now I see what you see in him. Look at this play or look at that play. But then he'd point to 3 plays in which, the effort was not necessarily good enough. And it drove him nuts. And he said, I can't imagine it doesn't drive them nuts. But according to all of the reporting, and now, starting with Ben 3 weeks ago, and now with what Adam Peters said, he's coming back. And they could have saved, close to $17 million in cap space. And instead, he's going to take up $28 million in cap space in this final year of this deal. I think what I emphasized yesterday is, while I am a little bit surprised, I also understand why they're doing it. They're doing it because, and I did say this yesterday, whatever his flaws are, they just don't have enough at the position that they can count on next year. I mean, they've got Kinlaw and him. That's who they can count on. I don't know if you can count on Johnny Newton yet. In terms of interior defensive linemen and maybe, 3-4 defensive ends, they don't have a lot. We'll see how they view Don as the fit. Wouldn't it be interesting if one of the reasons they're bringing him back is they actually see him as a nose tackle? I don't see him as that. I think he could do almost anything talent-wise. But whatever his flaws are, first and foremost, as to why I think I understand why they're bringing him back, is they just don't have enough at the position that they can count on next year in kind of a big year. I also said yesterday, and this is, this is not like a lock, but it makes sense to me that the trade market for Don is very, very limited because of his current salary. And so why not just let him play out this year? He's played his best in contract years. Let him walk after next offseason, where at least you might get a comp pick back for him. So I think a lot of that may be in play here. It's like, okay, we don't have much there. Don, even flawed and even occasionally not, not occasionally, rather inconsistent with a lot of different things, including production and even effort at times. He's still better than anything we have and anything that we may add. And he might be a better fit for Durante Jones's system. He's playing on a contract year. That's when he played his best ball. He's still young. He's not an old guy. He's going to be 29 next year. And we can't really trade this contract. Because remember, if you trade Don Payne and somebody gave up anything meaningful for him, they'd feel like they have to extend him and give him a new contract. And I don't think anybody's ready to do that now. They want to see another really good season. Look, this may work out best for Duran, too. Duran playing on this last year, there's going to be a level of desperation. And he'll be at an age, if he comes off a great season in 2026, where he'll get paid at that position. Somebody will ignore the fact that his two best seasons were in contract years, and they'll pay him. But I don't think there's a trade market for him. I don't think it's a meaningful trade market for him. So from their standpoint, I understand it. Am I a little bit surprised about it? Yeah. When Ben first reported it 3 weeks ago, I was surprised. I thought him, Lattimore, and Allegretti, were the three gimmies. Or certainly the first two were gimmies in terms of releases. Lattimore saving, let's see where it ends up with any sort of injury settlement consideration in the $15 to $16 million cap savings. Duran would have saved close to $17 million. Allegretti will save a few million. And I thought that those three were the most likely, Lattimore a given, Duran a likely, and Allegretti a possible. And Lattimore is still a given. And the fact that they are keeping Duran, I think, is surprising. But I'm also excited to see how he will play for them, because there's probably some truth in that they don't have anybody else. They don't have enough, which means he's as good as they got. I think Kinlaw's better right now, but he's certainly as good as anybody else on the roster. It's not like there's obvious answers in free agency. Franklin Myers, potentially, there's a couple of them out there, but you're going to have to pay them big money, and you'd have to release him probably more than trade him. I just don't. I bet you the comp pick they'd be expecting back for Duran in 2027 off of a good season for Duran is better than what they might be able to get right now. I mean, you never know. Teams may not get what they want in free agency. They may not get what they want in the draft, or even free agency may dictate an opportunity that they have before the draft. You never say never. In Washington, if that's still a part of their thinking, that, there still could be somebody that comes out of the woodwork after they don't get what they need in free agency and offers us, a fourth rounder or a third rounder for Duran. I doubt it. I don't think Duran right now with that contract is a day 2 pick. I think it's a day 3, and I think it's a later day 3 conditional. Best case. And if he has a big year and he signs somewhere else in 2027, the comp pick you would get back for him would be better. So I think all of that has gone into the thinking, so I understand it. I also understand that Duran's track record says that this is the season he'll be more consistent. He'll put it together. There just are guys like that. But as far as last year goes, I personally did not think he had a great year or a good year. I think he had some good moments. But again, I think consistency was once again the problem with him, and getting high-end effort on every play was clearly not something that was evident. But they need, at the very least, they need bodies. They need, some bodies that know what they're doing. And Duran does give you, a couple of plays a game that are spectacular. That's for sure. I got this from Daniel J, and I wanted to talk about this for a little bit. Because Daniel J writes, here's the big draft what if for you, Kevin. What if Downs, Bailey, Bain, and Reese are all gone by 7? What do you do if Love and Tate are the only 2 great players left on the board? Yeah, I've seen that scenario painted a few times. I think we talked about it recently. I know I asked, I'm pretty sure I asked Stanford Steve last week, who really knows the draft well, about, those guys all being gone. What would you do? Um, and so Dan Quinn yesterday did some of the rounds at the Indy Combine, and he sat down with Rich Eisen. Rich Eisen, correct, Max?
Yep.
And he was asked about Jeremiah Love and the possibility of Washington selecting Jeremiah Love at number 7. Here's what he said.
This great balance, that we have together, and I certainly enjoy it.
Pardon me for asking about a specific player, but I'm going to do it anyway. Jeremiah Love's sitting out there, and obviously you've got some, decisions to make on the offensive side of the ball.
Yep.
He's a dynamic running back.
He is.
You could see what you as a defensive coordinator in this league know how difficult it is to stop somebody who can do it from that position. Where are you on the philosophy of taking a running back as high as you're drafting?
Yeah, I think the best thing, man, who are the guys that can help impact your team?
Right.
And I think our league has changed a little bit, Rich, over the last few years into that way. When you see guys who can absolutely make impactful plays to do things, that's really what you're looking for.
Right.
How does somebody impact the team in a great way? And sometimes that's through running back. And we've seen, the players over the last, 4 or 5 years who have done that, and they deliver. And so what happens, I like him and him and him. When you get into that spot, there's so many guys that you like, and you start putting them into rankings and where do you go. But like I said earlier, Adam and his group, they've got a really good process, man, that they go through. And I'm still learning a lot of the guys now from the college side, just getting done free agency and going through a lot of those evaluations. I'll learn more over the next, few weeks for sure.
Man, I'll tell you, he is good at saying nothing. I hadn't heard that. You had that ready for me. He didn't answer the question, obviously. But he did kind of imply what he implied with me a couple of weeks ago, because I asked him on the show, I asked him if, I could grant you the wish of landing a player that helps you at one specific, a player, you're not going to name the player, but a player that helps you at one specific position more than any other. Here's what he said. Player play.
That's a great question. You want somebody that's going to make a significant impact on the team. And so the offensive side, that's generally somebody that's putting up points, that's scoring. On the defensive side, that's somebody that can affect the QB or single on a receiver to, eliminate this player. So those are the ones, to me, if you're making the biggest impact, one that can put points on the board, or the rusher or the corner that can take points off the board by the style and the attitude that we play. But whoever that player is, I want them to have swagger of a commander, intensity, toughness. And when people watch us play, to say, hey, man, is that dude an absolute baller by the way he attacks it? And so those are things that I know win, and those would be the traits I was looking for. If it was offense, somebody that is adding touchdowns, and defensively, the rusher that affects the QB, knowing you got to go after the head of the snake, or a defensive player that can really guard people tight in the moment of truth, throws, third down, 2 minutes into those spaces. So those would be the 3 most important factors to me heading into it.
Jeremiah Love had 21 touchdowns this past season in 12 games. It's pretty good. 18 rushing touchdowns, 3 pass catching touchdowns. Understand this too, that more than half of the games he basically was out of the game in the fourth quarter. And Carnell Tate, same thing. I mean, a dynamic wide receiver that can score from anywhere on the field. And that's what they're looking for. In listening back to that for the first time in a couple of weeks, just to hear him talk about, a player that's got that commander swagger. First of all, yeah, it just doesn't sound right to me, but I'm not going to make it about the name. But nobody played with much swagger last year. We got one season in which they played with swagger. Jeremy Reeves played with some swagger. Bobby Wagner played with some swagger. If that's what he's talking about, I get it. But I just think about what we talked about yesterday, Max and I, for a bit, about the worst game last year. And that Detroit game, Detroit was essentially playing 7-on-7. It was like a scout team they were playing. on defense. There wasn't much swagger on defense really at any point during the season. But I guess the question back to what Daniel J asked is, what would I do if Downs, Bailey, Bain, and Reese are all gone? So I have spent, and will certainly spend a lot more time looking at the draft from a fan perspective, not a scout perspective. We'll have plenty of people on to talk about the draft well in advance of the draft. But I also am a huge college football fan, as many of you know, and I watch a lot of these games. And I'm just going to tell you this, that I feel like David Bailey's the guy to get, and I hope he falls to 7. And at the same time, if he fell to 7, I'd wonder why he fell to 7. Because to me, he's the guy more than any other that Dan Quinn's talking about. He's the guy that can make plays defensively to change games. Let me just say, I'm projecting him to be that player, at the NFL level. I think he's got that kind of ability, more so than Bain, more so than Downs, and yes, more so than Reese. Reese's production isn't there. David Bailey, go watch even a highlight reel of him at Texas Tech. 6'3", 250, and super quick twitch, like real quick twitch athleticism, and just multiple moves and a relentless motor. I like everything about Bailey, I think, more than anybody in terms of the people that we're talking about that might be available at 7. I'm a big Caleb Downs fan too, but I almost feel like that's not really what Quinn was talking about. From the safety positions, sure, you can really impact games and you can score, but not like an edge rusher or a running back or wide receiver can. But Caleb Downs is the absolute real deal. He'd be number 2 for me. So Bailey and Downs, I'm personally hoping right now on February 26th that one of those two are available at 7. Because I think both of them have the best chance to becoming star players in the NFL. And this is of the players that everybody's talking about in terms of the top 10. Other than watching some of the other players, I haven't done a lot of homework on a lot of the other players, including, by the way, Sonny Styles, who Kuiper mocked. I mean, I watched Ohio State a lot. I like Sonny Styles, but I don't view Sonny Styles anywhere near that description that Quinn just mentioned. That's David Bailey. That's Bailey even more so than offensively Tate or Jeremiah Love, in my opinion. But back to Daniel Z's question. What if Downs, Bailey, Bain, and Reese are all gone by 7? What do you do? Well, what they should do is take the best player on the board, period. And it won't be a quarterback and it won't be a left tackle more likely than not. I'm talking about, at a position, and they got plenty of needs. And I think that ultimately that would come down to, Jeremiah Love or Carnell Tate. The thing about running backs, let me just say this. I'm a big Jeremiah Love fan, but he's not Gibbs and he's not Bijan. I'm coming to this conclusion the more and more I watch the style of running. I think Bijan is the most special back in the league right now. I don't think there's a back that has the ability to impact a game in the way that he does from that position more than he does. And Saquon obviously is the most successful in terms of being the best player on an offense that ended up winning the Super Bowl. That Super Bowl was defensive-led, though. Let's be clear about that during the postseason. It was a defensive-led Super Bowl win, but Barkley was outstanding the entire season, nearly set the NFL rushing record mark. But when you think about Derrick Henry, hadn't even been to the Super Bowl. Jonathan Taylor hasn't sniffed a Super Bowl. Bijan hasn't sniffed the playoffs. Jahmyr Gibbs, 2 playoff seasons, but only 1 impact playoff game, and they lost that game. You start going down the list of the guys that have been drafted super high. I mean, it's too early on Ashton Genty. It's too early on Omarion Hampton. Hampton got hurt, missed a bulk of the games last year as a rookie. I thought he was good, though. I thought he was good. Genty, I think it had some moments. Travion Henderson wasn't picked high. Nobody used a high second-round pick, yes, but not the kind of pick we're talking about at number 7 overall. You go back to 2024, there was nobody taken at that position in the first round. 2023 was Bijan, and then Gibbs at 12. Both of those backs are exceptional, and they can score from anywhere on the field, and they totally change the way a defense has to, prepare and then defend your offense. But they haven't won anything with those guys yet. I mean, the Lions were a 1 seed, but they weren't a 1 seed because of Jahmyr Gibbs. The Eagles were a 2 seed, much more so because of Saquon Barkley than the Lions were a 1 seed because of Jahmyr Gibbs. You go back to, the other first-round backs in recent memory. Najee Harris hadn't won anything. Travis Etienne hasn't won anything at this point. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, was a part of Chief teams, but certainly wasn't the key back, on those teams. Josh Jacobs, was taken number 24 overall in the first round back in 2019. He's a really good back. They haven't won anything of note. They've been a playoff team in Green Bay with them. And then you go to the Barkley draft, which, by the way, 2018, 3 backs were taken in the first round. Barkley, Rashad Penny, and Sony Michel were all taken in the first round. And then Leonard Fournette was taken at number 4 in 2017 with McCaffrey at number 8. McCaffrey and Barkley have had the most success. I'm not comparing, though, Jeremiah Love to McCaffrey. McCaffrey is a totally different comparison. McCaffrey is as much wide receiver as he is running back. That's not Jeremiah Love. And I know that he caught like 27 balls this year. I mean, he caught more than he had, I think, for like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Jeremiah Love is damaging as a runner. I honestly don't compare him to Robinson or Gibbs or Henry or the elite backs. I think he's very good, and I think you could see some Josh Jacobs, in him. But I don't think that Jeremiah Love at number 7 would be my choice. I think Carnell Tate would be my choice. Or I'd have to look at, deeper into the draft with players that have potentially been mentioned, for number 7 overall. Because if those 4 defensive players are gone, the best scenario for them would be if those 4 defensive players are gone, people think they're going to take Jeremiah Love or Carnell Tate, and somebody really wants those players. The Chiefs really want Jeremiah Love, and they trade up 2 spots, and Washington can pick up, an additional pick or 2 for the 2 spots. And then maybe still get Carnell Tate at 9. Something like that. I think that Tate would be my selection. I'd want a wide receiver that can score from anywhere. It's not that I feel like Jeremiah Love wouldn't be a really good back in the NFL and be better than the backs that they have right now, but their backs right now are not a major need area. And the elite backs in the NFL, even though we've seen a resurgence of the running back and the running back importance in the league, James Cook, in the last couple of years, Bijan Robinson, of course. And then, even if you want to go down the list and take like a major speed home run threat like Devon, Achane, somebody like that. Javonte Williams just got signed for an extended deal. I like him coming out, and I actually think he's still got a chance to be not an elite back, but that second tier of backs. Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, going down the list, those guys. They don't necessarily lead to you winning a Super Bowl. I mean, Bijan Robinson right now, I think, is the best all-around running back in the league. He led, I think, the league in all-purpose yardage last year. I'm pretty sure he did, right? Did he have Bijan Robinson last year had, I believe, close to 2,000 yards all-purpose. Let me just see what he was. Yeah, easily. He had to lead the league last year in all-purpose yards. Will you look that up for me, Max?
He's 3rd behind Shamir DK and Kavonte Turpin, but those are return specialists, so that would be
okay.
Why.
So of the every down players, he was number 1 in the league.
Yes.
And it looks like, what was it, 2,308 yards total?
I hadn't seen 2,298, but that
Okay, 2298, fine. 2298, 2,298 yards, 11 touchdowns. And he had a back with him that's really good in Tyler Algier. Had a receiver, had a tight end, had an offensive line, had a quarterback second half of the season. I mean, Bijan to me is number one. Stylistically, production-wise, you know what? I say that, and then it's like, no, give me Christian McCaffrey. Give me a healthy Christian McCaffrey for 17 games. That's actually, right now, the way the league's gone, it's a tough call on running backs. You know, who is the best running back in the league? Because they're all a little bit different. You know, like Bijan Robinson stylistically is different than all of them. I mean, the patience, the quick moves, that dead leg that he gives a defender, sometimes without not in space, but in a telephone booth. It's amazing. But Christian McCaffrey, totally healthy, maybe him. And then you watch Derrick Henry run over people and dominate a game. But none of those guys, except for Saquon Barkley, have won it all. I mean, Kenneth Walker III, I've always liked Kenneth Walker. I thought he was very underrated. I was surprised when Washington played Seattle this year that they weren't running the ball as much. I like Zach Charbonnet, too. I think Kenneth Walker III is not in the Bijan Robinson class, but I think he's in the second tier of guys. So Seattle technically won a Super Bowl with a really good back, and the really good back was the MVP. But that really good back was selected in the second round of the NFL draft back in 2022. He was one of the guys that year in 2022 that I loved coming out, that I was pushing for in that draft. I think, let me pull that up, the 2022 draft, because Washington selected Brian Robinson Jr. in that draft, right? 2022's Brian Robinson Jr.
Second round, I believe.
In that draft, I love Tyler Algier. I talked about him leading up to that draft. I talked about Kenneth Walker leading up to that draft. Who was the guy that I really liked that has not worked out? There was somebody. Here's the list. Yeah, that draft on the running backs, I did pretty well, actually. May have been the year before. Anyway, yeah, the year before, I loved the kid from Oregon State, Jefferson. I loved Jake Funk out of Maryland. He got picked in the 5th round. I think he still might be in the league, but he's obviously not turned into greatness. Anyway, so the question for you, I'll ask the same question of you guys that Daniel asked me. If the 4 best defensive players are off the board, all right, Downs, Bailey, Bain, and Reese are all gone by 7. What do you do at 8? And let's just say, for the purposes of this call segment, there's no trade down opportunity. Who are you taking? I'm taking Carnell Tate. That's a change in mind for me from Jeremiah Love. I'm taking Carnell Tate. Max will give you his answers. I want yours at 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980, theteam980.com. And don't forget, you can watch the show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Just hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. If Downs, Bailey, Bain, and Reese are all gone by 7, who do you take at 7 if you're Washington, if there's no way to trade back, right? We're taking trading back off the board. Jeremiah Love is certainly going to be, I think, an answer that many of you give to me. I like Jeremiah Love. I'm not saying that I don't like him. I do. I don't view him in that stratosphere of Bijan, McCaffrey, Gibbs, etc. I don't. I think he's going to be a very, very good NFL back, though. Don't get me wrong. But even with the best of the best backs, I went through the list. It's not like they're winning Super Bowls and winning lots of playoff games every year. In recent years, not really at all. Bijan's not been to the playoffs. Gibbs hasn't won. I guess Gibbs was on the team in 23 and wasn't a significant part, became a significant part as the season went along. They did get to the NFC Championship game that year and lose to the 49ers. Breece Hall hasn't won anything. Najee Harris, just going back, it's Saquon and McCaffrey, really. You might be able to do that with the wide receivers too. I feel like that Carnell Tate is as much of an upside player at that position as Love is. I'm not minimizing the upside of both of these players. I think both of them have a chance to be great players. But I watch Carnell Tate over and over again. I mean, this is a 6'3", 200-pound, polished route runner. He's a hands catcher and a great hands catcher. He's very good in contested catch situations. Now, he's had Jeremiah Smith on the opposite side of him for the last 2 years, not to mention Bouquet and others. Jeremiah Smith might be the best player in college football right now and next year too, before he's eligible for the 2027 draft. But there's something about just the idea of Tate and Terry out there with, hopefully another playmaker that they add somewhere along the line in free agency that would get me excited with a backfield, even if they don't add to it, that I think has a chance to be a decent one. Do they have an elite back in their backfield? I don't think they do. I certainly saw in that home run threat run by Krosky Merritt against the Cowboys something that I hadn't seen all year that it was nice to see. He's definitely a really good vision back. He's probably perfect for what David Blau wants to do with more zone run schemes, more under center runs. I like Rodriguez too. I think Rodriguez is a pounder. I mean, in some ways, you look at it and you say, could they be the combination of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet? Could they be Bijan and Tyler Algier? No. That combination is the best. Because you've got the best back and you have another guy in Tyler Algier who'd be the obvious starter on another 18 teams in the league. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. The defensive best in this draft, Downs, Bailey, Bain, and Reese, are all off the board when Washington's on the clock, and there's no trade back possibilities. Who are you taking, Max?
I'm going Jeremiah Love. Just 21 touchdowns, all those yards in this past season at Notre Dame. Like, they're not playing slouches. And so I think he's the best prospect of the running back wise that we've seen in the past couple of years. I think he's better than Genty. So I am for it, especially with how this offensive line has progressed. I think our interior, talking about Chris Paul, Tyler Biotish, and Sam Cosmi, they were, I think, top 6 in the league, if I recall correctly. So I would like to see Jeremiah Love get behind, an offensive line like that and see what he can do in this offense, especially with Jaden's running threat, David Blau's new system. I'd be very excited to see something like that.
Look, I'd be excited to see it too. I mean, I don't think they'd make a mistake doing that at 7 with the defensive players off the board. But we've got, a choice here. And again, there may be players, I may update this at some point and say there's actually a player that I'd prefer. I'd actually like, Falk, the edge rusher from Auburn. I'd rather have that. Haven't spent a lot of time looking at some of the others just other than watching their games. Maybe I'd come up with Sonny Styles. So you can come up with whomever you want, but Tate and Love are on the board as are Styles, as are Falk, as are, Mesidor and Delane and some of the others. There's some good players. A lot of people think those 4 defensive players, though, are gimmies for the first 4 to go. And for me, like I said, to me, the number 1 player for Washington at 7, my hope is David Bailey. That's who I would hope. And if it's not him, then I would love it if Caleb Downs were available at 7. Either one of those 2 players I'd be thrilled with. Either one of the 2 players that I debated, I'd be happy with. I would just take Tate over Love. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Bill in Fairfax. Bill, the 4 defensive players are off the board. Who are you taking?
I'm going to go with Jeremiah Love, and the reason I say that is because of the amount of times he would handle the ball, a running back. I mean, you could get a running back. He's pretty strong, 15, 20 times a game. I'm not a big fan of the running back, the bring in one guy who's a passing specialist, another guy who's a running specialist, because you're kind of tipping your hand. If you got one guy that can do, all of it, so to speak, you can run on this play, you can pass on this play, and they don't have a hint of what you're going to do. The other thing, the question I had was, is money ever a factor in the draft? And what I mean by that is, if you draft a running back, then you're going to have to go out and get a defensive end in free agency, which could cost you $30 million. Versus if you drafted that same quality defensive end, you can get him on a rookie contract for 3 or 4 years and go get a running back for half that in free agency.
Sure.
Is that?
Yep. And by the way, it's a great free agency running back group this year if you really feel like you need to add to that room. I'm wondering if they really are desperate to add to that room. I think they're more desperate to add a wide receiver than a running back. I'm talking about offensively. But, of course, your point is well taken. The issue is, you want for this upcoming season, because it's a rather important one, it would seem, for a lot of people out there, you'd want the known versus the maybe. So the known would be, Max Crosby in a trade, but I don't think they have enough to get there, to get to him. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate it. Let's go to our guy, Aveen. Aveen, the 4 defensive players, top 4 defensive players in the draft are gone by 7, and you can't trade back. Who are you taking?
Hey, Kevin, I'd be thrilled to take Jeremiah Love, even if one of those defensive players were available. What I'm seeing is, I probably don't watch as much as you, but what I've seen from the draft nicks is a lot of people are having Jeremiah Love as the position player prospect.
As what? I missed that. Sorry, Aveen. What did you say?
A lot of people have him as the best position player prospect. So, like, outside Mendoza. Like, right. Daniel Jeremiah has Love as number 2. Brugler has him as number 3. And they're talking about him
Kuiper's got him super high on his big board, right? I think he's got him at number 2 behind Mendoza.
Probably. And they're talking about him like he does have a Gibbs, Bijan level impact. I heard Brugler say that he runs like a wide receiver outside the backfield, and I didn't know that. I didn't know he was a receiving threat like that. So if he has that level of impact, then yeah, I would definitely take him. I think the reason why a lot of these highly picked running backs don't work out is because running back is so dependent on the surrounding infrastructure. So a lot of these teams picking these elite running back talents, they don't have the passing game or quarterback to go with the running back. They don't have the offensive line. But we have both of those. So if he'd be in a perfect situation coming in. If you want a big priority is still making life easier for Jaden Daniels. If you want to make life easier for Jaden Daniels for the next decade, Love is only 21 years old. Give him this scary, immediate home run threat level hitting running back. Make the play action easier, protect him. Defenses will have to play honest. That just makes his life easier for the next decade. You get another really scary player to pair along with beside him. So I think it makes sense. And a quick question for you, Kevin, about this goes into the play action stuff. My understanding is with under center play action compared to the shotgun and pistol, and I think you brought this up, is that the under center is a longer drop back, which means the quarterback's eyes are shielded longer, their back is turned longer, and by the time they look up, players are more open downfield. So I think what Quinn has been emphasizing with that is, more explosive plays. Just wanted to see if you think that makes a difference, and maybe Love also feeds into that with the play action stuff.
Well, I think Tate would feed into that as well. With any back piece, play action. One of the things we've learned over the years as NFL fans is even when you're not running the ball very well, play action tends to work if it's really sold well. But yeah, of course, it's a longer drop back from under center than it is not under center. The difference between pure shotgun and pistol is in the pistol, you're a yard closer to the line of scrimmage and the back is behind you. And you actually do turn and shield the ball from the defense to hand the ball off. Not as, it's not shielded or, masked as long as it is from an under center play. But you'll see, the Rams, as much as I think they led the league in under center snaps, but a lot of their non-under center snaps were pistol snaps. Where Stafford still turned, and they still got the benefit of protecting and shielding the ball from the defense. Just in shotgun with the back next to you, the ball's always exposed. But even then, if it's a really strong mesh fake, it can really still keep a defense at bay in conflict. We've seen that especially with the dual threat quarterbacks, because you don't know if they're going to pull it or not. Back to your, and we'll take more calls on this. So 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. If you're on hold, we'll get to you next. But the thing about Love is I do like Love. I don't want you to get the wrong impression. I like Love a lot. And I think he's got a chance to be a great back. And I think he has a chance to be a versatile great back. I do not see when I watch him, the Gibbs or the Bijan or the Reggie Bush comparison is what he gets the most. I don't see that as much. I see incredible speed and incredible straight line speed. And I'm not saying he's got bad vision because he doesn't. But I think straight line speed is evident. The stop and start ability in the hole isn't as evident to me as it is with Gibbs, with Bijan, with Reggie Bush back in the day. He gets comped to Bush a lot. What we saw with Kenneth Walker, the third in the Super Bowl, that was more Le'Veon Bell-like with that kind of patience. But I see an excellent back. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know if he's at that level. And when you look at those guys at that level, what have they been able to do with them? I mean, Bijan hasn't been to the postseason yet, and he might be the best all-around back in the game right now. Now, so is McCaffrey, and they've gone to Super Bowls. Haven't won it yet, but you'd take going to as many and winning as many games as they have with McCaffrey. More calls next. Just sitting here, just going back through some of Jeremiah Love's really good games against good defenses. I love him. I just don't see the effortlessness in the ease that you see in a Bijan or a Gibbs. It's not there, or even a Reggie Bush. It's not. I don't think that's the right comparison. I think he's more like Josh Jacobs with maybe more home run speed. But we got a long way to go before the draft. I'd take Carnell Tate. Max would take Jeremiah Love if Downs, Bailey, Bain, and Reese, the 4 best defensive players, are all gone by 7. My hope is that Bailey's available. Although I say that, and it's like, if he is available, that would make me wonder about some of the other stuff that we never get to know about, the intangible stuff, because he's just too obvious as a college football producer to slide to 7 if you need an edge rusher. I like Reuben Bain. I do. But Bailey and Downs would be my hope that one of those two are there. But if they were not there, for now, subject to change, I would take Carnell Tate. What about you, Lap? Lap, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, Kevin?
Hey, Lap.
Hey, what's up, Kevin? Good topic, man. Yeah, I definitely take Carnell Tate. I've been on him from the jump. Doc's been kind of selling me on the Jeremiah Love, so I wouldn't be mad. And of course, I would want Downs or Bailey if those, if those were the top choices too. But man, I mean, Tate, I just think he stretches the field, his playmaking ability. I've been saying it for a while. A young receiver needs to kind of push Lang and Luke, and also somebody that can help Terry out. But also, and I'm just hoping that Terry doesn't continue to be injured. But if we have a guy like that, he could build chemistry for years to come with Jaden. And I think Jaden needs to have a young guy, and maybe Bill could be the other young guy too. But I just think he needs a young receiver that he can build with for years to come, man. He's explosive and dangerous, special, and he's that typical 6'3" receiver, man. Kevin, you a tough sell, man, because sometimes it's hard to figure out if you like certain players or not, man. Because once you do the breakdown, it's just, man. It's like, damn, does he even like anybody? Because
do I even like anybody? I do like Bailey. I like Bailey a lot.
Yeah, but it was a good point, though. It was a good point because Bijan is special, man, and those other guys.
Bijan's been to me my favorite for a while now.
Yeah, I think he's the best all around, no doubt. Yeah,
appreciate it as always, Lap. Let's finish it up with Mark and Largo. Mark, go ahead.
I think if you ask me right now, I would go with Tate. If you ask me by my birthday, which is Wednesday, I'm probably going to take Kedrick Falk. Because I think Kendrick Falk is going to have a hell of a combine.
That guy from was your birthday yesterday, Wednesday, or a week from yesterday?
It's next Wednesday.
Okay,
next
so
Wednesday.
You and I are both. You're
right.
You're a Pisces too.
Yeah, just like you.
Yeah,
just like you.
That's why we get along so well.
Look, I like
what?
Yeah, we do. You know what? I was back and forth with Jeremiah Love, but Kevin, here's the reality that a lot of Commanders fans need to start facing. And no one is talking about this. This is possibly going to be Terry McLaurin's last year here as a Commander.
Right.
So you got to get his heir apparent, and that's Carnell Tate.
That's a real God, man. This is strange, but you just made a really good point about why Tate. Now, you don't do it just because of that. You do it if you've got Tate and Love even, and you like your running back room. But to your point, it's one of the reasons they drafted Josh Doxson in 2016. Remember, Pierre was going to be gone after the following season. Right. And they weren't sure about whether or not Deshaun Jackson would be back for the following season. They were going to need receivers. And Terry, for all intents and purposes, people, just so you understand, he's in the last year of his deal, not technically, but in terms of what they'd be willing to pay him going beyond next year, it'd be a major restructure if he were to stay. Major. So, really good point. But you like Tate the player too, right?
Right. And here's the thing. I don't think Terry wants to go through what he went through last summer. Not here. I think Terry would rather be a free agent and then find somebody else to pay him and go from that point on. I think if David Blau and Jaden Daniels had their choice, it would probably be Carnell Tate. They would go with Tate. And the reason why is, like you said, he's got great hands. And you would have someone who you could just throw the ball to, he would always have someone he
Yeah.
could depend on. Whereas, right now you got Scary Terry. You could get Romeo Dobbs. You probably will get Brandon Ayuk. And you're probably going to get Isaiah Likely now that I can't get my buddy. And you can make things happen. I do think Tate would be good. Look, I have nothing against Love. I just think Bill Merritt wasn't used enough last year. Now, did he make some mistakes? Yes. But Bill Merritt has home run capability, and you can get running backs in free agency this year that could complement everything else that's going on.
Look, the running back position to me, like, if they added a truly special back, I'd feel great about that because I don't know that they have that in their running back room. I got to run, by the way. Thanks, Marcus. But, here's the thing, and somebody just sent me a note, and I didn't know this, but I just verified it. Carnell Tate did not have one recorded drop last year. When you watch Carnell Tate, he's got such great hands. He's such a polished route runner. He's played big against some of the better defensive teams. He's got incredible body control, great contested catch guy. To me, it's like incredibly high floor and incredibly high floor, but not like a limited ceiling either at 6'3", 200. I think his ceiling is super high. The one thing he'd have to do is change his jersey number because Terry's got number 17. That's what Carnell Tate wore at Ohio State. Barry Svrluga next. I got into the Olympics late in the Olympics last week, but we talked a lot about Michaela Schifrin. We talked a lot about Alyssa Liu. Michaela Schifrin sent the following tweet at the end of the Olympics. She wrote, quote, "I want to sincerely thank one of the great writers out there, Barry Svrluga, who will sadly be closing this chapter with the Washington Post. You have covered the highs and lows of my career with integrity and passion. Thank you. Looking forward to following your next chapter." Close quote. That is really unbelievable. You rarely see that happen publicly from coaches or players or athletes. Barry Svrluga joins us right now. And the news with Barry and several others from the Post is that they are heading to The Athletic. I'm going to get to what Michaela Schifrin wrote to you on X, on Twitter in a moment. But I knew certainly that Barry Svrluga wasn't going to be out there for very long after, the news about the Washington Post sports section ending. So tell everybody about your next move and who will be joining you.
So I'm, so grateful and thankful and excited because I get to do a version of the job that I've always wanted to do. I'm going to be with Nikki Jabala, our great beat writer, formerly a teammate of mine at the Post, out in Ashburn, doing probably a more Commanders-heavy version of my old job. Like instead of going out there, once a week and for the games, I'll be out covering the Commanders on a more daily basis, more regular training camp stuff. But I'll also be able to weigh in and do my, old columnist gig with whether it's holding the learner's feet to the fire with the Nats or, weighing what's next for Alex Ovechkin and the Caps and just kind of be a DC voice. So, the Commanders are the most important game in town. Nothing's bigger than the NFL, and they're coming up on a really pivotal season for their quarterback and their coach and their GM and the whole franchise. So that's really exciting. And then, my editor there is going to be a guy who's my editor for years and is a familiar person to DC sports fans in Dan Steinberg. Adam Kilgore, who's one of the most versatile, talented sports writer in the country, is going to go there and do some breaking investigative stuff. Spencer Nussbaum, who covered the Nats for us at the Post, they're going to have now something The Athletic hasn't had for a while, and that's a full-time Nats person. He'll do that, and I'll join him at Nats Park. Candace Buckner, who's an award-winning columnist for the Post, is joining as a national columnist. Ava Wallace, who's a really strong voice on tennis and has a lot of experience with podcasting and video, is coming to join the tennis team. And Jason Murray, who was our sports editor for the last few years at the Post, is going to join in an editing position. I think there will be more to come. It's really exciting. I didn't want anything like what happened at the Post to happen, but I'm really happy and proud that the dust is settling where it is.
Well, congratulations. I've known you for a long time, and I certainly knew you would land somewhere. I'm happy for you, and I think it's a great spot for you. And the fact that you'll be more focused on Ashburn will hopefully mean we will talk even more often, although I think some of my favorite conversations with you over the years has had nothing to do with the football team and interest that you and I both have in things like college basketball and golf. What I really want to talk to you about, though, a little bit today is the Olympics. First of all, what Michaela Schifrin sent to you, have you ever had anybody do that publicly with you before?
To me, Kevin, it wasn't just that she tweeted something. It was how thoughtful the tweet was too. She didn't, and I messaged her. I messaged her, but I also messaged her agent and her publicist and was like, anything you guys, any role you guys had to do with that is really appreciated. And they were like, nope, that's all Michaela. I met her in 2013 before her first Olympics, and she is obviously one of the most extraordinarily open and honest athletes I've ever been around. But she's always entrusted me with her story, and that included going into this Olympics where I had visited her in Colorado last September and her mom was undergoing cancer treatments, which no one else knew about, and they allowed me to kind of break that in the feature that ran before the Olympics. So we've had a really good relationship through, as she said, you know, winning gold in 2014 and 2018, and the big strikeout in Beijing. And she's really entrusted me with a lot of her story, but you know, there's no obligation at all to do something like that publicly. It was really, really, really nice of her, not necessary, and really not something that she should have on her mind. So it reveals something about her for sure.
Well, I'll tell you this. I spent, I think, 20 minutes talking about her last week, not just about the run that she had in the slalom for the gold, but the way, Barry, she communicated, the way she had been dealing with the grief of the loss of her father, and how she had carried that with her, and how she didn't know if she could compete or win without him being there, until she realized before that last run that actually she needed that to be with him. I couldn't believe how, I mean, I thought it was incredibly moving. And she did it not only with Cara Banks, I think, from NBC right after the run, but she did it from the podium, which I'm assuming you were there as well to witness. And I mean, you get stories like this all the time in the Olympics, and they tend to surprise me because I'm not following the Olympic story heading into it. And even in the Winter Olympics, I didn't pay attention to a lot of the first week, but the way she handled the communication and about the way she processed her sadness about her father's loss was incredibly moving to me.
Yeah, and she has a way of, like, there's no not thoughtful answer with her. There's no pre-programmed kind of cliche, this is you know, what we get from a lot of athletes. And I don't fault them either, because they have to kind of go into mode, and it's a job, and this is part of the job. She considers every question and tries to articulate every emotion. And it can be hard because she realizes it's complicated, and she's complicated, and she knows the reality of her dad not being there. He died in 2020. This isn't super new news, but how she processed that was new. And I think she did a really good job in that moment of saying, you know, this, I kind of got freed from that. And I also, I mean, Kevin, just, you know, and having talked to her over the past several years since her dad died, like, she didn't engage. She had a sports psychologist and all the stuff to try to deal with going for Beijing and the weight of all of that. But only recently did she engage with a grief counselor. And she was like, wow, I didn't even really know I needed that, but I wasn't, you know, I knew I was grieving, but I wasn't dealing with the grief. So this is all part of that process. And it's an extraordinary thing to see an athlete who's, you know, essentially the best to ever do it, deal so openly and be so honest about everything she's going through, and not answer a question just for the sake of answering the question, but do it to really try to reveal who she is and what she's dealing with, and what the accomplishment means and what it doesn't mean.
You know, you mentioned that it wasn't new news, but I think for a lot of people that tune into the Olympic sports every 4 years, it is more new news, not to you who's been following not only the Olympics, but her in particular. But, you know, in watching her afterwards and you talking about her, I'm curious as to whether or not you have like an all-time number one most thoughtful, most interesting interview or athlete that you dealt with.
I mean, she is up there. She's a, you know, if we're doing a NCAA field, like, she's a 1 seed Kentucky for sure. Every time. I am adamant, and I know he's a divisive figure in this town, but like, Bryce Harper is a 1 seed for me. I always could count on him for twice a year. Let's sit down, cut open a vein for me. That included, you know, his whole signing with the Phillies, and, you know, afterwards, all of that. He's really, really thoughtful. Also, I'm sure I could come up with a couple more, but those two, they really, in part, Kevin, because it's a combination of how thoughtful they are, but also, if I'm being honest, like they're both such prominent people that don't kind of have to do that. Like, they're both at the top of their games. Bryce, a multiple time MVP, Sheehan 3 golds and has won more World Cup races than any skier in history. Like, the prominence of their, position in their field kind of matters to me in assessing that too.
The other Olympic story, and I talked a lot about this even on yesterday's show, or earlier this week, I can't even remember. But I saw right before I had you on that you had written about this last week. I had missed it, but you wrote a story, Olympic pressure is real. Let's admire those who acknowledge that. And I had found Les Carpenter's story about Alyssa Liu, and he had tweeted, the most interesting athlete I've ever covered. And I thought, and I didn't know anything about her. I didn't know anything about figure skating, full, admission, until they did a profile on her last Thursday night, right before her, free skate final. And I'm like, wow, what a story. Then you watch this performance. And I was talking about it yesterday, and I'm like, I don't know that the sports psychology has ever had a more interesting case, because at least from my standpoint, and I think a lot of people have written about this after the fact as well, that the idea of competing at the highest level in the most intense environments, but not carrying that weight on your back is what she looked like, is a new thing. Like, that's so rare. So you wrote about just Olympic pressure is real. Let's admire those who acknowledge it. And I think you talked about the local skater here. But what did you make of her performance and her story?
Well, I mean, in full honesty, that night that she skated, I was at the women's gold medal hockey game. So I didn't see it, but I know the story, and I think there's something, obviously athletic pressure is, that's in the Super Bowl, that's in preseason for a guy trying to fight his way onto a roster. That's all over sports. It's part of the package. But I do think, because of something you said earlier, that these people kind of pop into our consciousness every 4 years, and really maybe, like you said, I only really paid attention to the second week of the Olympics. Like, when is their opportunity? They know that they're going to go back into oblivion for, immediately when the torch goes out, yet they're going to have to put in the same amount of work in obscurity that nobody knows they're doing. And even really nobody knows they're competing, for Alyssa Liu at national championships, right, or world championships, for Michaela Shiffrin on the World Cup circuit, like whether she's winning her another overall globe that indicates the championship there. Like, most people don't know about that. And I think the Liu story is I think Les is probably right, and he's covered a bazillion kinds of athletes from the NFL to Major League Baseball, all over the place. Like, he's assessing that a person who got burned out at 16 and was like, I can't do this anymore, but then somehow rekindles the flame. And again, I think with Olympians, like, we go out and cover in Ashburn OTAs with like an intensity of like, who's standing out and
right,
what's on the line here. And that's very real. But for the most part, these Olympians for 3 years and 50 weeks in between their appearances on the international stage, like, they're kind of doing it in obscurity, and that can really wear on some people. And I think it's important that you don't have to pay attention to them in between Olympics, but it's important to understand what they go through in between times that they're entering your consciousness.
Yeah. I think the coverage of our local football team, even for me, and I understand what I need to talk about much of the time for the best possible audience size. but it's tedious and it's so meaningless. Even this draft talk, and I just did an hour on the draft, Barry, if the 4 defensive players are gone, who would you take at 7? And it's like, nobody knows anything about the draft. Even the teams that do this, that get paid big money to do it, if they're successful, they're hitting on 1 out of 3. And yet we obsess about these things so much. I personally just love the games more than the other stuff. But back to the Olympics for one last question, and that is, the story that you wrote, you didn't actually address those that acknowledge the pressure and don't overcome it. And just speak to what you wrote about with respect to the local skater.
Ilya Malin, and I think kind of the self-dubbed quad god, he
explained what
really,
that means to everybody.
Well, it's a guy who's doing these 4 rotation jumps, and I am not a figure skating person. I've never covered it at the Olympics, but I know enough to know a little.
Yeah.
He's pushing the boundaries of his sport, and he's doing it kind of willingly, when if he had skated a more conservative program and not tried to do all of these 4 these quad jumps, he probably could have won gold. And in that moment, in an interview with Les Carpenter, he said, the pressure was overwhelming, and that's a great way to put it. He could not pull off the stuff that he could do in practice on that stage, and it was really a learning thing that's going to shape him for the next 4 years when he comes back again at age 25 and tries to, push those boundaries again. I saw it with Shiffrin in Beijing, a very, very weird Olympics at the tail end of a pandemic when she had COVID within the month before, but also she couldn't or didn't pull off stuff that is just routine for her. She skied out of 3 different races when, I don't have the stats in front of me, but at the time, it's just something that never happened to her. She didn't fail to complete slalom runs, and she was missing gates. So I think it's, we've talked a lot more in society and in sports over the last 5 to 8 years about the mental health of athletes, or the mental health of all of us. And I think this is part of that talk. What is the pressure? What is the cost? What's the impact on people, not just in their performance, but in their lives?
All right. Talking to Barry Svrluga. The news with Barry is he and several others from the Post are headed to The Athletic. You can follow Barry, of course, on X at Barry Svrluga, Svrluga. So Michigan and Duke played here on Saturday in D.C. I know you know that, even though you weren't there for it. I'm just going to share with you what my thoughts were about this, and I want you to tell me what you think. You know where my allegiances lie, not only with Maryland, but with just basketball in this market. I hated to see that game played here. I think that game should be played with Maryland involved in it, or Georgetown involved in it. I think for Georgetown, in many ways, it's borderline, so minimizing to have that building packed to the rafters. I don't blame anybody with Monumental or anybody else. From a business standpoint, it makes total sense. But I hated that essentially for a day and a half, 2 days is the momentum built for this. We had a major college basketball game in this town, and it had nothing to do with Maryland or Georgetown.
I don't disagree with you, Kevin. I think that both should be able to be true, but I also think at this moment in time, it shows, these are all, you're talking about 4 brands right now: Michigan, Duke, Maryland, and Georgetown. And the brands for the Terps and the Hoyas are at a very low ebb. And I think it's harder for Georgetown because it's a smaller school. Anybody who's spent any time thinking about this, lack of an on-campus arena, kids have to go down to this NBA arena that's not really theirs. Is the product enough to fill that place up to 20,000? I think evidence would suggest no. And, Ed Cooley, who walked in the door, kicked open the saloon door and said, we're going to win a national championship. It's a hard job, man. And you might have some NIL money and some real loyalists there, but building it up to where it was is damn near impossible. I'm super curious about what's going on in College Park because you can say it takes time to build a program. And I don't know, 10 years ago, you could say that, and year one is kind of a blip. It's not like that anymore because you need to rebuild a program every year. And if Buzz Williams is having these results in year one, like what evidence is there that a foundation is being put in place that's better for year two? And, we've talked, Kevin, like, I hate going back to this drum, but if you're in a low ebb with Maryland basketball and you're in the Big Ten and people are kind of like, well, on a Tuesday night, do I want to go out there and see the Terps lose by 30 to Purdue, who I don't really have any attachment to? Like, I'm not sure I do. So very, very interesting and precarious positions for those two, really should be pillars of college basketball in Maryland and Georgetown to be simultaneously at this like very low ebb is a little concerning.
Yeah, and I mean, it was just 12 months ago that Maryland was a top 10 team and went to the Sweet 16. But you're right. I mean, it's all about now, and there are concerns. Look, Buzz isn't going anywhere after year one, but next year becomes a very big year for him, I think. And I am curious now. I mean, Georgetown got beat at home the other night, Barry, by Providence, by Marquette, who's not a good team, by 16. And it looked like there were 5,000 people in Capital One. Some of the pictures that were going around on social media. I mean, I think Ed Cooley's a really good coach. Does he survive this?
Yeah, I mean, I think he probably does. I think there's an argument that it's still kind of, what is this, year 3? Like it's a little bit early in his tenure, but again, that's the kind of existential question of like, what does 1 year in college basketball mean now? Because there's so little relationship to what the next year will be, because the roster could be completely different and maybe should be completely different. And you're, as a coach, you're trying to preach like what's the value of cohesion when the sport inherently discourages cohesion. Like that's very, very difficult. I'm just going back to Maryland real quick. Like, 12 months ago or whatever, 11 months ago, they were in the Sweet 16, but like that whole visit was colored by the fact that the coach was very clearly on his way out then. And so you remember that week, like as a Maryland fan, your first Sweet 16 trip in however many years, like you didn't really get to enjoy it because it was like all about Kevin Willard and Damon Evans and all Damon Evans and all that kind of stuff, the mess that was going on. So neither program feels particularly stable to me at the moment.
All right, I'll finish with this, going back to the Olympics, because you tweeted this and I wanted to save it to the end. You said there's always the risk of recency bias, but talking about the men's Olympic hockey final between the U.S. and Canada, you wrote, you tweeted, this is one of the most intense events I've ever covered. So tell me what it was like to be there, and then give me the others that would rival that in terms of intense environments.
That had to have been tweeted probably in the middle of the second period. And I can't shake it. I mean, it was, and that's, so that's before overtime, before Hughes's goal, before you feel like the weight on Canada for losing that event. And before Connor Hellebuck made like 38 saves that you can't believe. So I'm not going to waver from that in a week, a year, a decade. I don't think. I think that will always be one of the most intense environments I've ever been in. I would say up there off the top of my head, I was, very similar event, 2010 Olympic men's hockey final in Vancouver, U.S. versus Canada, Sidney Crosby on home ice in overtime after the U.S. had tied it up with 30-something seconds remaining in regulation. Like, because that was in Canada and you could feel the whole country heaving with every kind of change in the flow of action, like that was incredible. And then, I mean, you'll appreciate this. Duke, Carolina in the Final Four in New Orleans in Mike Krzyzewski's last year. Like they had never met on that stage. And a Duke or a Carolina person had ever envisioned what that would feel like. Like, it felt exactly like that, except times 10. It was like there was so much intensity, but there was almost more anxiety because in a way, losing that game would be worse than the satisfaction from winning it. Like,
Right.
you could feel all of that with 50,000 people in the Superdome. Those in terms of intensity are right up there. And, I'd go to something like, Game 7 of the 2016 World Series with the Cubs and the Indians, two teams that franchises who had not won in forever, that went to extra innings and had a rain delay in the 10th and just insanity. This gold medal men's hockey game fits with those. And I just love to frame these as barroom discussions. Kevin's oh yeah, but this one had this going on. Oh, but that one was in Canada. So it was amazing. And I don't think recency bias is influencing me. I think there's some clarity that was an unbelievably intense game between two great teams.
The Carolina Duke end in Kay's final year. And obviously you are a Duke guy. I think most people know that about Barry. But I think you ask a Carolina fan, and it's hard for them to pick which was more satisfying. Actual final, win at Cameron Indoor in the regular season final, in Kay's final game at Cameron Indoor, or the Final Four win over Duke, because that for a North Carolina fan had to be a month, from heaven. That just was so thrilling for them. If you've talked to a lot of Carolina fans, which one was more satisfying, at Cameron Indoor or in the Final Four?
I think it's a toss-up, and I think that's a great bar discussion that, he's not here in Chapel Hill for those people, because,
right,
winning in Kay's last game in Cameron, well, it doesn't have the significance. There's no ticket to the national title game there. Stomp on the D in the middle of the court and just, flip them off on the way out. That's incredibly satisfying. And you got to remember, Kevin, that Carolina team was not a great Carolina team. It had some good pieces, but the Duke team was a better team and had higher.
Caro was leading them on that year, right? Am I right about that year?
It was Armando Bacot was in his 7th
No, I'm talking
year.
about for Duke. Bancaro was the best player on the floor.
Yes, for sure. So anyway, I think it's a layered discussion. But the fact that Carolina in that year, when Krzyzewski was being kind of feted at every stop, to crush Duke at Cameron and then do it in the Final Four for a Duke team that had wanted to win it all and send this guy off in the best way possible, but incredibly satisfying on both levels.
Yeah. Congrats on the move. You'll be great there. It'll be good to read you and follow you there. Appreciate the time. We'll do it again soon.
Appreciate it, Kevin. Anytime. Thanks very much.
Barry Svrluga, everybody. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. So the Indy Combine always produces news stories and, obvious results from the players there interviewing and working out, etc. But there's also other league news typically that comes out of Indy Combine week. Yesterday, we got that Washington is playing an international game. We knew that, but in London at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We don't know who the opponent will be. We'll find that out in May. Earlier in the week, we found out that the actual tush push isn't even going to be voted on this year. Nobody presented it as a rule change. So last year, 2 votes short of banning the tush push, and this year we can't even get it on the ballot. But yesterday, there was something really interesting that came out of the NFL's league office. Troy Vincent, former player, played here, remember? Had the blocked field goal that Sean Taylor picked up against the Cowboys in 2006, got face masked, and that led to a Nick Novak game-winning kick. One of those crazy Redskin Cowboy finishes from back in the day. But Troy Vincent's been the EVP of football operations in the league now for a couple of years. And he talked about replay errors last season. He said that out of 171 replay review or replay assist decisions, man, I would have thought that there were even more. There are 282 regular season games, so I don't know if this counted the playoffs or not. I think it did not. I think it was just regular season. They had 171 replay review or replay assist decisions. That's less than 1 a game. I would have thought it would have been more than that. But anyway, out of the 171 replay review or replay assist decisions that happened during the 2025 NFL season, there were 5 that the NFL claims they'd like to have them back. They got wrong. 5 of them. 5 out of 171 replay review or replay assist decisions. I don't know. It seems like the hit rate, the inaccurate hit rate would be higher. Let's just take them at their word, because that's not really the story here. The story is that of the 5 that they'd like to have back, 4 of them took place in the 1 o'clock window of games. And Troy Vincent said it was, quote, because of the volume of games in that window. So 4 out of the 5 mistakes they made in the 1 o'clock window because of the volume of games. Are you kidding me? So now it's more beneficial for teams to play in the 4 o'clock window or to play at night, in a standalone? You're the NFL. How do you have a staffing problem with something as important as this? Sean Payton, the Denver Broncos head coach, said after hearing the news, he said, I was a little surprised to find out that the majority of replay errors happened in the 1 p.m. games. I don't like hearing that. I want to play in the 4 o'clock window now. By the way, the fact that those 4 errors were made in the 1 o'clock window, it's probably even money that it worked against you. It could have worked for you playing in the 1 o'clock window where they were understaffed apparently. But Peyton said, I'm glad I'm in Denver because they play more late window games. We should never have a work shortage in replay. Those are the things we'll try to clean up and correct as far as people and just finding out. Mike Vrabel, the Patriots coach, another member of the competition committee, also questioned whether or not staffing was the root cause. I mean, Troy Vincent admitted that it was the volume of games. He said, we need to evaluate staffing at that level to find out and make sure that every game is treated the same, whether it's the primetime game on Sunday night or Monday night or Thursday night, or those 1 o'clock games that are the lifeblood of our league. If we need to figure out staffing issues that need to be taken care of so that those things are looked at better, then we can't let that slip. If you're curious, because I was, as to how each game is handled, so each game in the 1 o'clock window hour has a replay assistant dedicated to monitoring the action from the league replay center in the New York office. The replay assistants have an individual station that they're working at, and they use an Xbox controller to view the different camera angles from the game. But in the 1 o'clock window, the replay assistant is not the final decision maker on a review. There are replay supervisors and vice presidents in the officiating department that can make the final decision on reviews. And with the expansion of replay assists, those who work in-game management for NFL clubs have wondered exactly who that final decision maker is. And many people don't know because the league's been vague about that. And then at 4 o'clock, they've got a dedicated person that can make the decisions as well as the standalones. You know, there are certain things occasionally you just have to roll your eyes and shake your head at. I mean, this is a $27 billion top-line business that spits off cash at an alarming rate. I mean, how much incremental expense would it be to staff the 1 o'clock games the same way and treat each 1 o'clock game as if it's a standalone Monday nighter or Sunday nighter or Thursday nighter? Absurd. The one thing that they didn't have in this story, and I would love to know, is if this has been an ongoing issue. If we could go back to previous years. I mean, replay assist has been in effect for what, 2 years? Maybe only 2 years. So the replay assist part of it, when the referee, you know, they don't call something and the coaches, you know, are thinking about challenging it, but they get a quick replay assist because it's so obvious. Is that like a 2-year thing? I think that's like a 2-year thing. This was year 2 of that, right? I think so. But these are the kinds of things that you do. You're just like, come on, NFL. Like, come on. These are things that you've got to get right. These games are gold. Each one of these 282 are so precious. They're so precious. You want to add another 16 games. You want to get it up to 298 from 282 with an 18th, game at some point. You got to treat each one as if they are these precious, jewels that you cannot end up having any question that playing at 1 o'clock, opens up the possibility of official error when it comes to replay more so than playing in another window. That's absurd for a league like the NFL. Also, did you guys see that the UFL, I don't think we talked about this, Max. The UFL has initiated 3 new rules for its spring season. Number 1 is they've banned the tush push in the UFL. The UFL just confirmed this for me, Max, is the league that the DC Defenders are in, correct?
Correct.
Is that the only spring league that we now have?
Yes, they and the XFL, the USFL and the XFL combined to make the UFL.
Okay. So 3 new rules in the spring league, the UFL, for this season. Number 1 is the tush push is banned. The NFL's not even going to vote on it this year unless somebody brings it up at the, before a league meeting that I think the league meeting agenda has already been set for next month. So it would have to be, I guess, later on in June. I think they have one. The other 2 rule changes are, listen to this one, a 4-point field goal for 60-yard field goals and longer. You get 4 points for that. So the problem with that is, well, let me give you the third rule because they all kind of play into, these last 2 play into each other. The third one is, you are not allowed to punt inside the other team's territory. So once you cross midfield, you're not allowed to punt on 4th down. You have to go for it. So it could be 4th and 17 at the other team's 49-yard line, and you got to punt. Well, obviously, you're going to then take a delay a game and punt. But then the other team's going to decline the delay a game, right? You're going to get into that game. That'll get a little bit, I think it could get boring because you're not at 4th and 17 at the other team's 49-yard line. You're going to punt in football. Now you're not allowed to punt. So clearly you're now going to take an intentional delay a game. So you're on the other side, you're in your own territory and you can punt, but the other team will decline it and make you run a 4th and 17 play. Same thing with a field goal. Let's just say that you're at the other team's 42-yard line and it's 4th and 10. That's a 59-yard field goal. Well, what are you going to do? You going to kick the 59-yarder for 3? Or are you going to take a 5-yard delay of game penalty and kick one from, well, let's move it up. Let's say it's the 39-yard line. It's 4th and 10. So you're not really thinking about going for the 4th and long. It's at the 39-yard line, and it's going to be a 56-yard field goal because it's typically 7 yards back from the line of scrimmage. 56. Are you going to take a delay a game and go for the 4-pointer from 61 yards out? Well, you're going to do it if your kicker's got that kind of a leg. And then the other team, if it's Brandon Aubrey-esque, the other team's going to decline that penalty too. Like, what if you're at the end of a game and you're down 4? You're down 24-20 late in the game. And now it's not a touchdown that, is the only way that you can win the game. You can win the game by kicking a 4-point field goal. So, like, you throw the ball over the middle of the field, and the guy he's got some room to run at the 45-yard line, but he's going to have to go down before the 42 to ensure that the kick is from 60. And then you'll get the other team jumping off sides intentionally, maybe even committing a personal foul call. Like but I guess the offense would then decline it. Fascinating rule changes. The NFL should not ever consider the 4-point field goal thing or the punting inside the opponent's territory. I think they should ban the tush push. I've been in favor of that for a while. And the rule change that I actually think would be super, super interesting, and it's radical and it's dramatic. And I'm usually not in favor of super radical or super dramatic unless it really makes sense. Like, I didn't think, honestly, that the overtime rule needed to be changed to now, both teams being given for sure a possession. I was wrong about that one. I didn't think the extra point needed to be moved back. I still think that was not necessary. I don't think people weren't watching football because the extra point was a wasteful play or a play that didn't have much drama in it. But I do think that the onside kick and the possibility that it could be replaced by a line of scrimmage 4th and 15, 4th and 16 kind of a play from your own 25-yard line or own 30-yard line, I love that idea. If you're down 2 scores in the final 2 minutes of a game and you don't have any timeouts left, it's over because of the odds of successfully recovering an onside kick. They are so low. I think they were at 7% this year, 8%, something like that. And when you had the old rules, and maybe they'll change them back to where you could overload one side, you could get a running start, they were more in like the 14% range, 15% range. At least there was a chance. But I like that 4th and 15, 4th and 16 rule. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
A drop pass to Declan Chisholm, picks it up, now leaves it for Protas, now low to Chisholm, in front, a shot, they score! The activation on the far side, and it's caught by Trevor Van Riemsdyk, popped home against Ladar. TBR makes it 2-1 Washington.
John Walton on the call on Caps Radio, 106.7 The Fan, our sister station. The Caps won their first game post-Olympics after a 20-day layoff. They beat Philly last night at home 3-1. And actually, if you go back to shortly before the Olympic break, they've now won 5 of their last 6. But looking at the standings, and this is why I asked you to at least spend a few minutes on this today in our pre-production meeting, Max, earlier this morning, the Caps would not qualify for the playoffs if the season ended today, and they've got more games in hand than anybody at this point. Are you concerned about their ability to qualify for the postseason?
Yeah, a little bit. The East has always been, and over the past few years has just been getting better and better. And credit to the Buffalo Sabres right now being ahead of us in the playoffs or the playoff rankings, because man, that's the first time I've seen that in a long time. But yeah, I'm worried about the Caps. We got trade deadline is just a few, I want to say about a week away from tomorrow. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned with how this team and what they're going to add, or if they're going to add anything going forward. Spencer Carberry was on the Junkies a couple days ago, and he said he's eyeing a 16-7 record in the last 23 games to get into the playoffs. So tall task for the fellas. Hopefully they can get it right and get it done. But it's injuries have kind of plagued a little bit, but that top line scorer has been something that they've been missing, and it's going to be a hefty price to pay. It's just going to come down to if they want to pay it or not.
I mean, they're right there. It's not like they're out of it
Right
by a long shot. In the Metropolitan Division, Carolina's in first place with 78 points. They've played 3 fewer games than the Caps.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, the Caps have played 60 games. There are only 22 of these left in the season. So Carolina's going to be tough to catch. Pittsburgh is having a hell of a season. They've played 4 fewer games than the Caps, 56. They're at 70 points. 3 points ahead of the Capitals, and the Islanders are 2 points ahead of the Caps. And then in the Atlantic, the 4th and 5th place teams are both teams with more points than the Caps, so they would qualify for the 2 wild card spots if the season ended today. And then there are other teams in the mix, teams like Ottawa and Toronto and Columbus. And, the defending champion, Florida Panthers right now, you'd have to explain this to me. I think I have
Injuries.
this right, that they've been very injured this year.
Yeah, they have been without Barkov, who's one of their best centers. And then Tkachuk has been or was out for like the first 5 months of the season. I think he's working his way back. But yeah, he's also been trying to work through it. I think he played in the Olympics, though.
They're in last place in the Atlantic Division, 8 points out of the last wild card spot. Does anybody think that they're going to make a run, or it's just a shell of the roster that they've had the last few years?
For Florida, I mean, Barkov's out for the whole year, so that's a really tough thing for them to overcome. A top line center like that, just who can defend as well as he can, it's a tough hurdle to get over. So when you're missing that one of your top guys, it's just it's going to be disappointing in the next year.
All right. When we come back, Fred Smoot expected to join us in the next hour. We'll do more football and something Deebo Samuel said about his future in Washington. We'll get to all of that and more after this. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. This from Sack Daddy. They're sending 2 West Coast teams to Australia. Why would they send Seattle all the way to London? That followed a tweet that I got from Jimbo after I tweeted out my 3 guesses for the opponent in Seattle. My 3 guesses were Houston, Cincinnati, and Seattle. And Jimbo wrote, "Great tweet, Kev. Riveting. That's where we are, guessing opponents." Wow. Yes, that's perfect. Funny. Well, I'm obsessed with the schedule. What do you want me to say? But Sack Daddy, you are correct. It's a good point. But I looked this up because I thought that they were kind of different. East Coast team to Melbourne is basically a 22-hour. It's basically a 24-hour door-to-door trip. Whereas the flight from Seattle to London is about 9.5 to 10 hours. Going back, it's longer, but it's like half, basically, less than half the amount of time. But it's not a bad way to think in terms of, will they send Seattle to London? I don't know. They've sent London, West Coast teams to London before. I think they have. I will look that up. Should have looked that up before. Have they sent West Coast teams to London? Because if they haven't, then we're down to Cincinnati and Houston. Cincinnati and Houston would be the 2 teams. Yeah, the 49ers have played in London. The Raiders have played in London. The Rams have played in London. Recently, Arizona, Oakland again. Yeah, they've sent West Coast teams to London. So there you go. There's your answer on that. Last year, the Rams played Jacksonville in London at Wembley. Crushed them, if I recall. Yep, 35-7. Man, Jacksonville lost 35-7 to the Rams. At the end of the season, Jacksonville was playing really well. I think if they had beaten Buffalo, they could have been the Super Bowl team. You and I kind of felt the same way about that Buffalo-Jacksonville game. You know who came on and said the winner of the Buffalo-Jacksonville game's going to the Super Bowl with us? Ross Tucker. Remember Ross Tucker came on with us and said, I think the winner of that game's going to the Super Bowl and representing the AFC. And it didn't happen that way because Buffalo won the game and then lost that, incredible game the next week at Denver. I wonder if Jacksonville would have gone to Denver and won. I mean, didn't they go to Denver and win in the regular season? I think they did. Late in the season. Pretty sure they went, week 16, 34-20 at Denver. So, by the way, for those of you that say Washington's going to play Jacksonville in London, they're not unless they're going back-to-back, and they're going to be the Jags opponent at Wembley and then host a game. What the announcement was yesterday was that they are hosting a game. Jacksonville's already hosting a game as well. So I don't think that I don't think that it's going to be Jacksonville. That's my guess. Unless Washington ends up being the opponent for Jacksonville. Although, right, Washington has a road game against Jacksonville this year, not a home game. So they couldn't host Jacksonville in the game they got announced for. Is Washington going to go back-to-back weeks in London, playing Jacksonville one week and then hosting a game the next? It's not impossible. Minnesota did it last year. Both of those games for the Vikings were road games against the Steelers and Browns. They got the benefit last year of, instead of 9 road games, true road games, only 7 true road games. That's really an advantage. I don't think that's fair. And I think the NFL said, well, it's not fair to ask a team to stay in Europe for 2 weeks. I mean, I don't think it's as I don't think that hurt outweighs the benefit you get from not playing 2 true road games. And those were borderline home games. Vikings fans really travel well. The Pittsburgh game in Dublin was probably more of a Pittsburgh crowd, but it was closer to neutral. The Cleveland game was all Minnesota fans. I got this from Hal. Hal writes, are you hoping that Deshaun Watson recovers because you were so adamant that Washington should trade for Deshaun Watson, that ship sailed. He doesn't love football, and he's got a happy ending problem. Yeah, he's had a happy ending problem. Understood. I'm just saying that there is discussion in Cleveland that Deshaun Watson, who's still under contract and under a big contract, might end up with Todd Monken as the head coach, having a chance to compete with Shadur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel for the starting job, unless they add another quarterback from the outside, which is a possibility. I was a big fan of Deshaun Watson as the Houston starting quarterback, but I was not a huge fan of adding Deshaun Watson after the stories about his, personal transgressions came out. In fact, I said Washington can't do it. They're the one team in the league that cannot do it because of their history of, the allegations and the investigations that were going on of Dan Snyder and people in his organization. But before those announcements of the 40-some women or whatever it was with Deshaun Watson in massage, situations, I was absolutely in favor of going after Deshaun Watson. But I would have never gone after him after those stories came out. If they had gone after him before and those stories had come out, obviously it would have been terrible for the organization. And I would have never, ever advocated paying him the deal that Cleveland paid him. Obscene money, for sure. So Deebo Samuel was on somebody's podcast yesterday.
The Downs Brothers podcast. I believe it is called Downs to Business.
Who are the Downs brothers?
Caleb Downs and his brother Josh, who also plays in the NFL.
So Caleb's got a podcast.
Yes, he does.
With his brother.
Yes, he does.
Okay. So Deebo was a guest on this podcast.
Yes, he was.
And he talked about his potential pending free agency unless the team decides to cut a deal with him before. This is what he said.
So what team you want to play for this year?
I don't know, bro. We'll see how it goes.
What y'all gonna do this year? Commanders.
Bro, I'm a free agent.
So you don't even.
So we're gonna see how we're gonna see what's going on.
Oh, I feel you. So you're not even. So you had a 2-year deal?
I signed a one. They picked up my deal with San Fran. Yeah.
Oh, okay. How does that work? Like, I mean, I'm not in free agency yet, so season over. Talk to the peoples, and then y'all kind of go dark, or do y'all go like?
So like, this is my first year, so I'm like, I really don't know what's
this
supposed to go.
This is the first time the agent really.
You feel what I'm saying?
Make something happen, Andy. Make something happen.
So I've been knowing, I've been knowing Tory since I was a kid. So, it ain't been too much like nothing going on for real. I think he was like, the Commanders or something got to make a decision by March the 6th or whatever, and then that's when the real free agency hit. But me, I'm just chilling, working out.
Yeah, so it certainly doesn't sound like they've, made progress. I think my takeaway after listening to that for the first time, with maybe many of you listening to it for the first time, is that there's not like anything imminent with Deebo Samuel. The NFL, calendar that we are now into, essentially, March 3rd is the end of the deadline for franchise tagging players. They're not going to do that with Deebo. And then during the period beginning 12 noon on March 9th and ending March 11th at 4 p.m. or 3:59:59, clubs then are into that, legal tampering period. And then the actual day that you can start to sign players and execute contracts, March 11th, 4 p.m. I don't know that there is a deadline, he said March 6th, to sign your own. That's not on the league calendar. It doesn't say that anywhere. I think you can sign your own at any point up until free agency begins. But it didn't sound like they're working on anything. Like he doesn't know, if there was something where there was a lot of interest, mutual interest, and they were working towards a deal, maybe we would have gotten more of a signal on that from him. It didn't sound like it. And that kind of leads me to this, and that is, some of the players we talked about yesterday. Duran we talked about, but I want to focus on Ertz and Bobby Wagner in particular. Two of the older players on the team who have also been, significant contributors on the team. Let's not forget that this roster, is and was the oldest roster in the league. But if you look at some of the real old players, like Josh Johnson was the oldest player on the team at 39 years old. That kind of skews the age. You go to the long snapper or Tress Way at 35 years old, kind of skews it. Von Miller, 36, Nick Bellore, 36. I mentioned this all season long. The irony of people looking at the older players and saying they're too old is that the older players weren't the players getting hurt until Zach Ertz got hurt. You might say, well, Dietrich Wise. Dietrich Wise is an older player. He's a veteran player, but he's not an older player. Dietrich Wise, when he was injured last year, was 30 years old. He's 31 now. Like he's not an old player. Certainly Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner, in terms of the players that are being considered to being brought back, they're the ones that are old. Wagner at 35 years old and Zach Ertz at 35 as well. And my question is, do you think either one of these two players should be brought back? Ertz or Wagner? Yes or no to either one of them? Why or why not on both of them? I've already mentioned my feeling about Zach Ertz. My feeling about Zach Ertz is this. I don't mind if they bring Zach Ertz back, but I need a playmaking, pass-catching tight end on this roster that isn't Zach Ertz. So if he's in addition to, that's fine. But at 35 years old, going on 36 and coming off a serious injury, and knowing what's at stake in this upcoming season, I don't think I can just hope that he's ready to play 17 games at the same level that he's played as a pass-catching tight end the last two seasons. And I want younger, faster, more explosive. That's what I want on offense. That's what I want on defense. This offseason has to be certainly more explosive, faster, more explosive. If it's not, rookie or second year or third year, but I want a 25 or a 26-year-old, 27-year-old. So I don't have a problem with them bringing Zach Ertz back, but not as the number one pass-catching option at that position. With Bobby Wagner, I feel a little bit differently because of this. First of all, I think he could be an outstanding inside linebacker, certainly as a blitzer, as a line of scrimmage threat in a Durante Jones, Brian Flores style defense. There's a lot that actually fits with Bobby Wagner in the defense they may be playing. He also was a high-level player last year. I mean, of the older guys, he was the highest level performer. Bobby Wagner still showed last year at 35 years old. He can still do it. He is a tackling machine. He is a sure tackling machine, and he's an outstanding pass rusher, which would really play into the Durante Jones system if it's similar to the Brian Flores system. What you don't want him doing is you don't want him covering anybody. Does anybody really see a massive drop-off from this past season to next season, especially if they have better talent and health around him? I feel like if they decide to bring Bobby Wagner back, that I feel okay about that. I don't want him to be out there alone. Look, base 3-4, especially if they play it a lot, there's room for faster and younger in that linebacking core with him, whether it's, a McGee or a Sonny Styles or whomever that is, in the draft. You can still go out and get younger and faster to support him. And some of the players they had on their roster last year actually may get new opportunities that they didn't have. A Jacob Martin might get more reps. You could get more out of some of the players that maybe are better fits for this scheme but weren't for the last scheme. I'd say yes on Bobby Wagner, not that I want him to be the focal point of the defense, and no to Ertz if Ertz is being brought back as the number one pass-catching tight end. That's too risky for me. On Wagner and Ertz, yes or no on both of them, and why or why not? Phone lines are open 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Do want to mention that if your heat's been running much more this winter than it should have been, well, yes, it's been super cold, but it's also probably because your window insulation is failing. When it does, all your heat escapes and the cold gets in. The pros at Window Nation can help you fix that with new energy efficient windows at a great price. Window Nation's buy 4 get 4 windows free sale is going on right now through the end of the month. It's a great time to replace all the windows in your home. You can also get them with zero money down, zero monthly payments, and 0% interest for 2 years. Act now, get an extra 10% off just for listening to this show. Replace your old or builder-grade windows with custom-built high-quality windows from Window Nation. They measure their windows 3 times to ensure proper fit. Their installation crews finish the job in a day or less. You can get your windows with a lifetime warranty. You can choose from over 1,500 styles and colors. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Mention my name and they'll come out and give you a free in-home estimate. Max, Zach Ertz, yes or no?
Depends on how we do in tight end free agency. I would like to see Isaiah Likely here. But I do hear that the Falcons do plan on putting the franchise tag on Kyle Pitts, so that's going to limit our options a little bit. But I would like to see Zach Ertz back in some capacity, just not the whole picture. But he's been a great safety blanket for Jaden, and so I think I would like to see that continue into another year.
Bobby Wagner, yes or no?
I would like to see him in a mentorship role if we decide to go with a linebacker at some point in the draft. But I had this take last year, and I'll have it this year. He cannot be playing 98% of the snaps. I understand everything he brings to on-field checks and captaining the defense, but at the same time, I can't have you. You can't cover. I can't have you out there. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah. So for me, it's look. If both of them are back, I'm okay with that, but not at the expense of getting faster and more explosive, especially at tight end. Like, they need something faster, more explosive. And when it comes to Ertz, the problem is, are you going to really count on a guy coming off a torn ACL? It's too risky. So I'm less inclined to be super welcoming of Zach Ertz, even though I think they really need somebody like him. And he was incredibly reliable, but I can't rely on the fact that he'll be ready week one. Wagner, I feel a little bit differently about. Look, you've got to get faster and more explosive everywhere on this team, because really the only place you have it is at quarterback right now. You've got to get faster and more explosive. And that it would be great if that meant younger as well. Okay. But I don't care if it's 25, 26, 27 years old or 21, 22, or 23. I need to get faster and more explosive. And I need to be that on the field next year. I don't need to be that on the roster next year. I need it on the field next year. So I think there are guys like Tyler Owens that could see more time in this defense, but I have a feeling that they probably view Bobby Wagner as a player that would fit in the system, and he played at a very high level, and you just can't have him cover. I don't know why it's that hard. Let's go to Samaj. Samaj, Ertz and Wagner, yes or no, why or why not?
Hey, good afternoon, Coach. Thanks for taking my call, Max.
Yep.
And Max, you completely stole my thunder, dude. You almost said my stuff quote for quote, but it's all good because I love you. I'm just going to echo Max because Max is echoing me. I want Ike Likely, Kevin. Give me Ike Likely. Whatever they got to do, AP, bring him down to 95, and that's our answer at tight end. So no for Ertz because of that. And just like Max said, I would like to keep Bobby around if we draft a linebacker for mentorship. His leadership, and he can still play. So I want yes for Bobby, no for Zach. No for Ertz. And can I have a little quick sidebar with you, Kevin? You got time just for a quick one?
Yep.
Listen, man, I'm still in my feelings. And you toggled onto it with your first call earlier, your early guest this morning. And from watching that that Michigan Duke game in downtown D.C., and neither the Terps nor the Hoyas were represented, I still feel some kind of way. They got to get it together from the presidents down to the ADs, down to Cooley and Buzz. I mean, I just still feel the fact that neither school was represented in the Capital Classic, whatever that thing was with Edward Jones. I'm still just hurt by that. And that's all I had to say on that.
Yeah, look, I mean, we feel the same way, because it's like, this is not a conversation, all due respect to people who don't have a lot of passion for either program, Georgetown or Maryland. You're not going to understand what we're talking about, which is fine. But I hear you, and I heard from a lot of people like you, and I heard from some people, both schools too. I don't think the schools were that thrilled with it either, but raise your level, Little, go ahead. Wagner, Ertz, yes, no on both of them. Why not on both of them?
Coach, shout out
What's
to
up,
Mad
Little?
Max. I tell you, I can't call it, Coach. I tell you what, whatever they do, I like to see Ertz come back, but not in him and Wagner in a platoon situation. Now, look, I'm gonna tell you, Kevin, I'm the coach. I'm sitting up here reminiscing, man, and I'm seeing McGee and the kid Sonny Styles on the field at the same time in that linebacker position. Man, I'm telling you now, a lot of people looking by Styles. It's the reason why Dallas had him on his chart off the bat in the beginning, because I'm going to tell you now, he's the next Michael Parsons. That's what I think, man. This guy Sonny Styles, man.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell
I don't
you
know.
now.
I think Bailey could be Parsons, but Styles and his athleticism is going to be interesting too. We got a long way to go on that, and I like Bailey. I think he's super profiles as what some of the dominant edges in terms of pass rushers are in the game today. Ian, finish it up for us. Wagner and Ertz, yes or no?
No on both for very different reasons. I agree with you on explosiveness at the tight end position, the age of Ertz and him coming off injury. With Wagner, he's been one of your best players on the defense for 2 years in a row on an awful defense. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer, was second team All-Pro last year, and is a stalwart of a human individual. But you can't have that coming back. You need completely new defense, as many positions as you can. And I think you've seen it. We've talked about it. When he's in coverage, teams are hunting him. It's like Luka on defense in the NBA. Who's Wagner covering? We're going to go right at him. You cannot bring him back for this next season in any on-field capacity.
All right. I mean, I would think that there's a way defensively to scheme your hunted, pass coverage guy out of pass coverage when he's not a corner or a safety. It seemed to me like he was in it far too much. Fred Smoot due to join us next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. At some point, 25 years ago, Fred Smoot was working out for teams, getting ready for the 2001 NFL draft, a draft in which he went pretty high. Second rounder, 45th overall, although he thought he was going in the first round. Smoot is with us. Of course, you can watch everything Smoot does for all Commanders media outlets, the website, their YouTube channel, all of their programs. Fred is on. He joins us right now. What do you remember about the lead up to the draft in 2001?
Well, you know, it's the process of once you finish the bowl game, your season really starts. It starts with where do you train at? I started off training at Chris Carter camp that was in Miami. Then I left there and I trained in Houston. And then after that, it comes the combine. All right. Well, people think the combine is all about us running and lifting weights. The first thing we do, the first day we land professors, go to the hospital. We spend the first day, and I've always, and I was talking to Logan and to Santana about it. Did I feel like that was fair for you to have to go through everything medical in the first day, including giving up pints of blood, and then have to come out and lift weights and go top speed? Like I've always said, I think physically that put us at a disadvantage. But I think I was blown away with all the medical, and I was blown away with all the mental, because you take one test per team, so there's 32 tests for the teams. You also take the Wonderlink test, and then you have a team like the New York Giants that has a test with like 200 questions on it. So I was kind of blown away by that.
The Giants had a 200 question test. Do you remember some of the questions?
Oh, they range from everyday people questions to football questions to situation questions to, educational questions. It had a little bit of everything on it. Yeah, it's not shock you that the New York Giants would go overboard, right?
No, but you've told me this before. You really thought there was a decent chance you were going in the first round.
Oh, most definitely. I was picked. It was only me and Nate Clemens and Jamar Fletcher as the top three cornerbacks.
Right.
The only thing that stopped that was young Fred Smoot.
And so explain to everybody why young Fred Smoot changed that.
Well, it was some things that on the fast campus in Stark Vegas, partying, doing stuff right before the draft that I probably should not have been doing. And I looked at this, I probably cost myself anywhere between 4 to 5, 6, 7 million.
Wow.
But what I did get in return was I got a city, I got a lifetime to be, because a lot of people play in these cities where they get drafted at, and they never live in these cities afterwards. They never get any benefit afterwards. It's no longevity to it. Well, I got to be a part of something special, so I would sacrifice that any time. If you're telling me I was going to go 15 to Tampa or somewhere like that compared to being here, I would sacrifice it every time.
It is true over the years. I mean, and look, because of the lack of success for 33, 34 years, Doc and Brian and Riggo, and so many of the guys that played on the championship teams have had even much longer post careers in this city. But this city was always built because of the popularity of the team for a career following your professional career. But real quickly, back to that draft, I'm just curious because I don't think I've asked you this. Did you think that the Redskins were a possibility? Who did you talk to? Because do you remember who Marty's first director of player personnel was?
I know he was. Didn't he take him to San Diego with him?
He went to San Diego, but he's now and has been for many years the general manager in Seattle of the Super Bowl champion Seahawks. John Schneider.
John Schneider. Yeah, he was part of the drafting process. This is when I knew I probably had a chance to go to Washington. Is when I talked to Marty a couple of times.
You did.
And the one thing that I did studying Marty, I knew he was a cornerbacks head coach. I knew that was his real well. So I was like, if he's talking to me and not sending a DB coach to talk to me, that means it might be some interest there.
Yeah, he had, oh God, help me with it. The two corners in Cleveland that were really good
He had Dale Carter in
Kansas City.
He had those in Kansas City. In Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken,
Dixon?
Is it Hanford?
Hanford Dixon. Yeah. And then there was another corner that he had in Cleveland that was really good.
And he had the safety too, also from Miami.
Yeah.
Eric Turner.
Yeah, that's that. Well, didn't he pass away too?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it was. In fact, I think it was. God, I'm blanking. Was it Eric Turner?
Yeah,
Not
Eric Turner.
It was his last name. It was Turner. He passed away. It was actually not that long after Len Bias passed away of the same thing. A drug overdose, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, so you knew Marty was a corners coach, and could you sense that Marty wanted you?
Well, I knew when coaches were smitten by you, all right? Because when they like, all right, for instance, I got a chance to really spend a lot of time at the Senior Bowl with Coach Coward. So I thought I was going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler because he literally, when I say every move I made, he watched it. He really, like, it got to the point where I was, like, in the South practices with me, LaDainian Thomas, and all us, Reggie Wayne, and I'm dominating the South practices. So he sends for me to come to the North practice for me and Chad Johnson can go at it so he can watch us go at it. He done that 2 days in a row.
You knew he liked you. He was smitten with Smoot.
Yeah. So I thought I was going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler, and I knew I had a chance to be a Tampa Bay Buck. So I thought those were the two teams that I was going. But as the draft started to go, then I said, all right, once we get in the second round, whatever you think don't matter right now. It's all about who wants to come get you.
Right. Don Rogers. I don't know why we're trying to kill off Eric Turner. Don Rogers died of a cocaine overdose 2 days after the death of Len Bias in June of 1986. It was not as, it was a big deal, but the Len Bias death was a nationwide tragedy that was stunning to everybody. Do you know anything about Len Bias? Because I can definitely learn you up on Bias.
No, you don't have to learn me up on anything. I know everything that I need to know. Because one thing about me, I've always just been a big sports historian. Like in football and basketball, those was my real well. So between, when you say tragic story, him, Reggie Lewis, when you want to talk about, it was a Hank Gathers. Like when I was looking at Hank Gathers' stats from, I think that was Loyola Marymount that they went to.
Loyola Marymount, exactly.
Yeah. Him and who was the other player? Was it Hank Gathers?
Hank Gathers. Hank Gathers and the guy that ended up playing in the NBA for a long time.
And they numbers was like 29 points a game.
It was crazy.
10 rebounds and 10 assists.
Paul Westhead coached that team. He coached the Lakers team in 80 with Magic as a rookie to a title, and then Pat Riley replaced him. But Westhead played, Westhead ball, which was take it out of the net and we're running and we're shooting within 10 seconds. I think they averaged over 100 points in the tournament. By the way, Frank Minifield was the other corner we were trying to come up with. Dixon and Minifield. He had both of those guys in Cleveland together. That was a hell of a corner tandem. It wasn't Hayes and Haynes. I think Lester Hayes, Michael Haynes is the best cornerback tandem in my lifetime of watching NFL football. Do you have one better than that?
I can't give you that one because the Deion Sanders with anybody, to me, especially in San Francisco, hell, him and Tim McKyer was a group you had to dominate. Him in Dallas, that was a dominant duo. Like, I always say this. When you talk about corner duos, you always going to have that number one corner. The question is, can that number two corner make people throw back at the number one? That tells me if that number two is a legit corner. And can he hold his own? And does he specialize in a certain group of tactics like this? I was very good with tall guys. Give me Plexico, give me Randy, give me T.O. They do not bother me. I love to play basketball with them. All right, so that means I had I had a special thing that I could do with these guys. So you tell me if your number 2 can get that done, and I tell you, is it one of the best duos I've ever seen?
Larry Brown Larry Brown ended up winning the MVP of that Super Bowl, right? So he was the other corner with Dion.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, Michael Haynes and Lester Hayes, they completely shut out Art Monk, Charlie Brown, and the Redskins offense in the 83 season Super Bowl. And that was the best offense the NFL had seen. They were the all-time leading scoring offense in that moment. It was pretty good. All right, let's talk about today, although I love talking to you about this kind of stuff. Who do you want right now? As the combine is underway, what are the interesting storylines to you? And then have you come to a conclusion on the player that you hope is there at 7?
All right. If I had it my way, if it was Smoosterdamus working at the GM and and it's just me and Adam Peters and we collaborate, I would stand up in court and say this. I think the most dominant player in this draft to me that has already signified, one, I know my position and I can play my position. Also, I can play multiple positions. I might be the fastest man on the field, but I also might be the strongest man on the field. It's one Sonny Styles. You're talking about football pedigree, first of all. Second of all, you're talking about one of the most athletic. Listen to me. 6'4", 240 pounds. He might jump a 40-inch vertical. You're talking about a 4'4" middle linebacker. You want a clone of Fred Warner that might even take it to a whole nother level. This gets no better. You want the guy in the middle of your defense for the next 10, 15 years, chasing people down sideline to sideline, specimen. I'm talking about high IQ. I'm talking about takes great angles. I'm talking about when he gets there, people go down. I'm talking about can play the pass. He can check tight ends. He can check running backs. Tell me what else, Professor, do you need? All right, the one thing about R.L. Reese, is he a freak? Yes, he is. But we've seen this picture before. We've seen the same thing with Clemson, with the safety. I forget his name. But 6'4", 230 pounds, could not find a job for him in the league because I want somebody to do something well before you even get here. I need to know these things if I'm taking you in the top 7 picks, top 10 picks.
Right. He didn't have the production.
Yes, when I look at Sonny Styles, I see somebody that says, I'm ready for the pros, and I didn't capsize. Like I don't like people to peak in college. I don't think he peaked in college. I think his best football is in front of him, and I don't think you can make a case for anybody at 7 because he can't be a wide receiver. We don't need the offensive lineman. It has to be somebody that can change a game on a play-by-play basis. If it's 80 plays, he's going to play 81.
So, 2 things. Number one, in Durante Jones's system, if it's similar to Brian Flores' system, the base defense would be a 3-4, and Brian Flores played more base last year than any team in the league. So my question to you is he okay as an inside backer in a 3-4, as much as he would be effective as a middle linebacker?
It'll be the same exact thing. It might even be more effective because you got to realize if you're playing a 3-4, that means most of your edge rushers, they are 80 to 90% edge rushers. He has to do the sideline to sideline. The one thing you'll have is you'll have the luxury of Payne and Kinlaw keeping him clean. And that's even more. That's what Ray Lewis did with Saragusa and them they kept him clean and allowed him to run sideline to sideline. We'll be doing that with a better athlete.
If Sonny Styles weren't there, give me your number 2.
All right. If Sonny Styles not there, that means Sonny Styles went early and David Bailey got pushed back. I love David Bailey. He's a sack machine. You won't talk about body meets production meets he's gonna probably be a combine legend by the time he leaves. He's put together well. Like I think one thing he can do for him to be as tall as he is, he knows how to turn that corner, good body lean, and when he gets his hands on you, he's not letting go. I think he's the most complete defensive end in this draft. I also love Bang. I don't want to hear about no kangaroo arms because I watched the White Freeney.
He measured today. I haven't seen the results yet. Max, look those up to see how he measured.
30 inches. 30 inches.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, I don't care. I watched guys, Dwight Freeney and a lot more guys dominate, didn't have the longest arm, but they had a low center of gravity and they was bulldogs. That's what you're going to get with him. Think Hugh Douglas, think guys like that, Brandon Graham, that type of dude. That's what you're getting with a Bain. So if you notice, all of my guys are going to defense right now, but if I had to pick an offensive player, it would be Kenyon Sadiq. I think he's going to be special. I think he's the second coming of Brock Bowers. Yes, I think he is very much Brock Bauer-ish, and I think he could unlock an offense. And you want to talk about having a tight end in there, forces you to now you cannot double Terry because this guy would keep them chains moving, giving Jedi 5 some easy completions throughout a game. Too fast for linebackers. Too big for safeties and corners. He is a mismatch waiting to happen. And I'm just praying, Professor, that he just doesn't fall in the lap of Kansas City because then the rich get richer.
So I'm with you on Bailey. That's my number one. I think he's the one out of all of the defensive players that day one, he's a major impact player as a pass rusher at bare minimum. Like he's the quickest twitch guy of the pass rushers, don't you think?
Oh, most definitely. And not just quick twitch. He can go to speed to power to speed. He got counters. He ain't a one-trick pony. Like, he knows how to pass rush. But I'm going to tell you, Tedrick Faulk, at only 19 years old, at Auburn, is a man-child. Think Eric Armstead. Think Calais Campbell. Like, this dude is a monster. And you talk about mature, way past his years. Then you got Akeem Mesidor from Miami, who I think, how sometimes you're the second fiddle on the team, you get to the league, and you turn out better than your opposite guy. I think he has a chance to do that. And Gabe Yakis, I hope I'm saying that right. I think the J is silent. He's from Illinois. Watch his film. He is a dog. Like, when I say a dog, I mean a dog.
All right. What do you want to do in free agency? I'm sure you've got a short list of players you'd like to see them target. We know they're going to bring some of their own back. Is there anybody that you absolutely have to have back from their own? They're going to be 10, 15 players that they end up re-signing because they have all these roster spots available. But give me the 2 or 3 from their own list that you've got to have back and the 2 or 3 from the other 31 teams that you want.
Larry Tunsil is first and foremost the most important one. Get
They're
that done, make that long time. That's without question. Then when you look on the other side of the ball, the big Bobby Wagner thing is if I'm bringing in a Sonny Styles, it's no better mentor to have. But then that tells me we're also going to let Frankie Louvu do what he did last year, and do what he do best, and not what we had him doing last year, standing up and reacting, having him going downhill and becoming a chaos machine. So the Bobby Wagner thing is very, very intriguing, and most of the time after that, I think it stops. I don't think anybody is must have or must bring back. Now everybody's at the mercy of who do I snag in free agency. Beyond those two, I don't see anybody that I'm looking saying I must bring back to make it part of my core. Am I missing somebody?
I mean, I'd like to see Chris Paul back. I'd like the offensive line to be intact. I'd like to see a guy like Jacob Martin brought back. I thought that he was a relentless competitor, and I think he'll fit in well.
Jacob Martin.
Yeah. But no, I think you got him. I think the Wagner Sonny Styles thing is a very interesting way. So, all right, I'm up against it because I'm at a hard break. So we'll save your other, your top outside free agents for the next time we talk. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for doing this.
All right, anytime, Professor.
All right. Fred Smoot, everybody. We're done for the day. Chris Russell's next.